Hey, welcome to today's episode of the SynBio Transcript, which is the third of a series of three geared towards SynBio opportunities for undergrads. In today's episode, we'll talk about how if you're an undergrad who wants to consider something complementary to undergraduate research, and maybe you've got some friends who do synthetic biology, you've got an idea of your own, a space to potentially pursue it, and a team, and maybe you want to win an OpenTrons 2 robot, then this is the episode for you. So to hear more about this, let's switch over to my office back on campus, and I'll talk to you about IGEM and GOGAC.
What I'd like to do is to just quickly look over to share with you some materials that I found from the web about IGEM. It's a long and storied competition, very cool program. And then what I'd like to share with you is I had the privilege at the SEED meeting, the Synthetic Biology, Engineering, Evolution, and Design Conference in May 2022, to chat with a graduate student, Alex Ditzel, about the GOGAC competition, which is a more recent phenomenon and maybe a pretty compelling opportunity for many of you. So let's switch over to Zoom format, and I'll start mentioning what IGEM is. All right. I like to do my best here to try to capture some information succinctly and accurately about the IGEM competition. So as I said, it's the International Genetically Engineered Machines Competition. And it's a huge thing. One could describe it as one of the pioneering and one of the most significant organizations for the field of synthetic biology. Both an organization and a competition. I'm going to focus mainly on the competition. And I'm going to try to use the IGEM website so that most of the facts are accurate and up to date. I want to start with a little bit of history about IGEM. So the history of this is kind of cool. I'm just going to scroll through quickly here. You know, if you were at the 2018 Giant Jamboree, not that I was, and maybe in future Jamborees as well, you'll see this really cool looking timeline. And it goes all the way back to 2002. Some of the pioneers in synthetic biology came from information technology, electrical engineering, computer science. Tom Knight and Randy Bretberg are two of those figures who worked on ARPANET, which was, one of the projects that led to the internet. And they, in the early 2000s, they were interested in biotechnology. And this is also around the time that you have the dot-com bubble and the boom and then bust. And so you had some real talent and visionaries coming from electrical engineering field where, there were competitions like robotics competitions and other ways to engage undergraduates as well as high schoolers, even middle schoolers with kits and team competitions. So you could start to already see some of these ideas, originating in the IGEM competition, where they teamed up with Drew Endy, who was at the time a professor at MIT, as well as students in the community, and Gerald Sussman in electrical engineering, starting to create what was the beginning, what started off as a course and then became the IGEM competition. And so it started, I think, in 2004 with just 5 teams. And then there was a registry of synthetic parts and more institutions involved. And then it became an international competition in 2005. Okay. And then here's a timeline of sorts, but we can actually go back to this tab for a little bit of a different account of that, unless I have it on this one now. So this tab. There's a timeline here. If I scroll down. Yeah, so you can see it here in 2004, 5 teams, 31 participants. The competition held in person called a jamboree, eventually a giant jamboree in Boston, Massachusetts. Initially, I think at the MIT campus, and then went over to the Heinz Convention Center and larger venues, because what you start to see is the participant number just ballooning. By 2008, you have over 1,000 participants, nearly 100 teams. You exceed 100 teams in 2009. 2010 was when I started as a grad student at MIT, and everyone already knew what IGEM was. It's a household name. And so when you start to get to this level of international participation, it was putting some strain on, everybody being able to travel for that one weekend in Jamboree in Boston. So you start to see the emergence of regional Jamborees, and you have other changes happening as well. Things had to scale for this competition. Around the time that I was a grad student, I knew some of the IGEM team members, both at MIT and at Berkeley. And it was not just these institutions. Some institutions were budgeting, nearly $100,000, if not more, per year to the IGEM competition, which is just wild to think about. And part of that reflects a little bit of a challenge at that time, especially, maybe less so today in some respects, maybe not, of synthetic biology and living organisms are not quite as easy to deploy and distribute and democratize as a robotics kit, right? The cost of the parts, but more importantly, the cost of handling in a safe way and changing organisms to create genetically engineered machines, the practices and all of that, and the pace, all of this increases the budget quite a lot. And then the registration for a team to attend the Jamboree was in a ballpark $5,000, maybe now is $6,000. I could be misquoting that, but that's just to register your team. Right? So if you want to send, I don't know if 2,000 people are going to the Jamboree, but if you wanted to send a team of 10, or maybe you have a team of 10, you want to send 5 students to Boston, depending on where you are in the world, that could be a lot of transportation and lodging. So people could, but there was a lot of student engagement and interest as reflected by these numbers, a lot of industrial partnerships, which are captured still here, IDT, Ginkgo, Bioworks, and many other partners here. And so, in fact, with registration comes a little bit of free DNA and other materials and resources. And so, yeah, as you see in the last decade, the numbers have just continued to grow up until the time of the pandemic. That's the only time you really see the number of teams drop. I mean, the growth rate was slowing down because at the point that you have 353 teams from around the world, that is a lot, one team per institution, most likely, I think. And so, you have, you're gonna sort of consume your user growth or slow that down at some point. And so, since this was always located, the Giant Jamboree was always located in Boston, and many teams from Europe and Asia participate, as is kind of visible here. If you look at this map, I mean, certainly when you have these 3 distinct regions where there's a lot of teams participating, there's a feeling that, maybe Boston is not the only place that the Giant Jamboree should be, or even the default place. So this year, the competition has moved for the first time to Europe and will be held in Paris, and I believe in October 2022. Now, if you're, not in Europe, your transportation and lodging costs just went up quite a bit. And it may, and the IGEM competition is always during the fall, during an academic semester. So there are challenges that can be overcome, that are overcome on the regular basis, but may make it challenging for some folks to participate in IGEM, especially if you're not at an R1 program. If you're just trying to start an IGEM team at your institution, the registration of $6,000 or possibly a little more. Let's see what registration is now. So there's actually 2 fees now, a team registration fee and a Jamboree registration fee. There's a $6,500 late team registration fee. And then there's a second fee for that Jamboree registration. And so this can be difficult if you're at an institution that's just trying to start an IGEM team, maybe just has 1 or 2 faculty members interested in synthetic biology. And that's just, that's something that the IGEM organization is definitely working on. Before I leave IGEM, I just also wanted to mention, what do you actually do in this competition, right? For those of you who are interested. So IGEM is a very comprehensive experience. You're not just thinking about the science, you're thinking about a lot of different aspects. So in these 12 deliverables that are highlighted here, you have to think about safety. Policy and practices have always been a key component of synthetic biology, and the idea of genetic engineering and what that could mean in public perception, as well as the risks, to you or your teammates or the public. There's judging, and so there's a judging form that needs to be completed because this is a competition. You submit a video about your project. It's a quick introduction. You maintain a wiki page, and this has been, when you go back, actually, when you look online, one of the coolest things to do as a synthetic biologist is to scroll through IGEM team wikis, which are public, and you can see so many interesting ideas. Some ideas that were just very creative, others that you just think, wow, that's very ahead of its time. Some that work really well and are just like blown away. Some that lead to some companies emerging as well. Registry parts. So IGEM, along with the registry of standard parts, really wanted to emphasize, like with a robotics kit or that field of electrical engineering, standardization. You should be able to assemble and make a genetically engineered machine with instructions and parts that other people would be able to then use. That's part of the whole point of synthetic biology, is this idea of making biology easier to engineer. Attributions, a project description, title and abstract, some declarations, and then the actual Jamboree 15-minute presentation and a booth and a judging session. So this gives you a sense of what this competition can involve. Some teams work on it with maybe 4 to 10 people. I've seen many teams actually larger than 10 for a year, sometimes 2 years. Sometimes they compete every other IGEM cycle. And then that's just something to know that the teams that win at this competition have done some very cool things, but that isn't necessarily a barrier to entry. I think the barrier is still mainly registration and travel and attending the Jamboree, at least for some schools. Okay, so did that cover IGEM? I think it did. And so now what I'll do is I'll switch to more of an in-person interview format where we can talk about the Global Open Genetic Engineering Competition. That's what GOGEC stands for, in case I didn't say that earlier. So let's switch over to him.
All right, so I'm here with Alex Ditzel from Rice University.
Yeah.
And so you work in synthetic biology?
Yeah, I work on cell-free systems and doing things like caffeine synthesis and looking to develop other novel natural products through using cell-free systems as a platform.
Oh, very cool. Okay. And whose lab at Rice University?
I work at the Phillips lab at Rice University.
Phillips lab. Cool. Very neat. Well, Alex is actually not here to tell us about his research. Instead, we're going to be talking about a new competition called GOGEC, right?
Yeah, exactly. GOGEC is the Global Open Genetic Engineering Competition. And really the goal of GOGEC is to provide a free, open way for students around the world to compete in a synthetic biology competition and kind of show off their research to the international community, even if they don't necessarily have the funds to compete in other international competitions that may be more expensive.
Yeah, I feel like that's so huge because synthetic biology is so international. It's been getting expensive to try to beat these competitions. But who are the participants that you're looking for? I think you said synthetic biologists. Would they be graduate students or undergrads?
So primarily we're aimed at the undergrad level, where hopefully these are students kind of developing their capabilities, and it'll be really great for them to get feedback from people who have more experience or are more professional in the area, and see what other people are doing from around the world, but primarily people who are up and coming undergrad levels.
Okay, so if I'm an undergrad, maybe, I don't know, a sophomore or junior, would I be looking to start a GoGet team maybe at my university? Probably because how new it is?
Yeah.
When did the competition start?
So the competition actually just started last year. So our first competition was held in December of 2021, and we're looking to hold it again in December of 2022.
Awesome.
And if you're an undergrad and you want to participate, what you would need to do is form a team, then register, and there's a registration form available. And that's actually all you need to do to sign up, assuming that because it's free. So you don't need to submit payment or anything.
That's awesome.
Then you just need to do your project and follow all our safety regulations.
And the actual event venue is virtual?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's primarily in order to save costs.
Right. Engage that global audience, which is something we think about for this channel too, which is great. What is your recommendation on team size?
It actually varies. I think it depends on what you think is doable at your university. If you want to focus all the resources, research resources available on one team, and then you have a lot of people interested, and if you want to have a larger team, assuming that you can get everyone to do something, or if you just have a couple of people interested and you kind of want to focus it in on them, then you can have a smaller team.
So yeah, I had maybe one last question about the GoGet competition. So what can we as faculty or graduate students, or maybe even members of the general public, do to be involved?
So one thing we're looking for is volunteers for both organizing the competition, and we have various teams working on creating our judging criteria or biosafety regulations, in addition to just organizing the event and logistics in general. But also, we're looking for people to volunteer to be judges and help evaluate the undergrads, the teams, and help with giving them useful feedback so that they can improve in the future. And we're also open to the public in that you can register as a visitor and then attend to talk with the teams about their projects, or you can come and see our speakers that will be speaking at the event to learn more about synthetic biology.
That's great. And how would we find out about the event and more information?
So more
your website?
Yeah, exactly. You can just Google our name, or you can go to our website, gogetconference.org, and you should be able to find more information about the event there. And it'll be updated as more information about the event becomes available for the year.
Awesome. Well, it was great to meet you, Alex, and thanks for talking to us about GoGet.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
All right, there you have it. Thanks to Alex Ditzel and the rest of the GoGet organizers for the opportunity to chat. A couple of things I wanted to mention since recording that is that there have been a few deadlines and timing of events related to GoGet that have changed. So let's see here. The GoGet conference, instead of being in December 2022, is actually going to be in February 2023. And the registration deadline has been pushed back from July to what I believe is October. So you still got time to register and a lot more time to actually do your team work. So that's a wrap for this episode, as well as the 3-episode series here, which included why you should do undergraduate research, or at least consider it, how you'd go about getting an opportunity, and other kinds of ways as an undergrad to get involved in synthetic biology. So I hope you like that, and if you have any other suggestions or know about other opportunities, especially outside of your institution, like globally, for people to get involved in synthetic biology, please drop a comment and let us all know. So with that, that's the end of this episode. I'll be signing off. Stay hungry, my friends, and we'll chat again soon. All right, bye.